So generating bodhicitta depends on its causes, great love and great compassion. And while we may think it's easy to generate love and compassion for others, having a correct idea of what love and compassion are is not always so easy, because what the words mean in the Buddhist sense are not what they mean in a secular sense. And especially since love is the wish for sentient beings to have happiness and its causes, and compassion to be free of suffering and its causes, we need to really understand what happiness is and what suffering or dukkha is, and to also understand what the causes of these are. Without understanding this very clearly, then we may think that we are benefiting somebody, but we are not. For example, we may, quote, quote, love someone and want them to be happy, and take them out to dinner and have a lot to drink. Thinking we're having fun, we're happy. But is getting drunk happiness? And when we aid somebody in getting intoxicated, are we helping them to create the causes of happiness? Or are they instead losing their conscientiousness, and in doing so, creating negative actions? So this is why we need to study the Dharma, so we can learn the Buddha's meaning of these words. Otherwise, if we see things just in terms of this life and in terms of secular happiness and suffering, we may actually harm somebody while we're thinking that we're benefiting them. So with a deep commitment to the Buddha, to learn his teachings correctly and to integrate them in our mind, then let's generate the bodhicitta with an intention to really understand what bodhicitta is on a deeper and deeper and more accurate level as we continue to practice. So that actually is a whole other Dharma talk. Yeah. And I was thinking it really needs to be unpacked much more, because otherwise, our idea of being of benefit can actually be harmful to somebody. Yeah. So, I think we left off on verse 57, didn't we? So, let me give you, I thought maybe I should give the outlines for some of these verses. So let's back up just a couple of verses to 55. Because here we're really looking at our own weaknesses and seeing that we really need to take refuge in the three jewels and follow the Buddha's instructions. And so the analogy of a physician and the patient and the medicine is given. Okay? And so verse 55 is about the sickness of the three poisons has many shortcomings, and the medicine to destroy it is rare. With ordinary illnesses, the worst they can do is lead to our death. But that's only the death of one life. The illnesses of ignorance, anger, and attachment, and the other afflictions, can lead to the suffering in many future lifetimes. Okay, so the shortcomings of the three poisons are very, very far-reaching, even though society at large doesn't always recognize these three mental emotions and attitudes as something bad. Yeah, because we often think attachment is good. I feel happy when I get what I want. And we think anger is good. It protects me from all these mean people. And then we have the expression that ignorance is bliss. So, okay, if I don't know anything, then that's great. I don't have to worry about it. But the Buddhist meaning of ignorance, anger, and attachment is very different than the secular meaning. So we really have to learn what that means. So the medicine to destroy that is rare to find. How often in all of our lifetimes do we meet the Dharma? And even if we meet the Dharma, how much do we respond to it and want to learn it and follow it? And even if we respond to it, how much are we continuous in our practice? Or do we just practice? Some people practice when something bad happens. Other people, because when they're fine, they don't think about Dharma practice. So it's only when something bad happens they practice. Other people, when something bad happens to them, they drop their practice. And then after they're over the bad space, then they practice again. Okay, so the practice is not very continuous. It's on again, off again. Okay, so it's really hard to meet not only the external conditions for learning the Dharma, but the internal conditions of someone who has faith and diligence and effort and so on. Okay? So verse 55 said, and if all the people living on this earth can be overcome by just one of these, Okay, one of the three poisons. And if no other medicine to cure them is to be found anywhere in the universe, then the intention not to act in accordance with the advice of the all-knowing physicians that can uproot every misery is extremely bewildered and worthy of scorn. Okay, so if people can be overcome by any of the three poisons, and if we look at our lives, how often have we been overcome by them? Sometimes, it's a huge wave of negative emotion. Sometimes it's not that, it's even just a small one, but we give in to it, and then it takes us away. Okay, so if that's our situation, then isn't it rather foolish to discard the advice of the supreme physician, the Buddha, who is trying to help us cure ourselves from this disease of samsara by eliminating its causes, the ignorance, anger, and clinging attachment? Yeah, so that's like somebody who goes to the doctor, gets the prescription, recites back to the doctor what they're going to do, and then doesn't go to the pharmacy to fulfill the subscription. And even if somebody gives them the medicine, they just put it on the nightstand and ignore it. How often do we do that? We go to the doctor and then don't follow the doctor's advice because, it feels like it's too much trouble. And it just takes too much energy. And why should I take that pill? I don't want to take that pill. And anyway, what does the doctor know? Well, hopefully the doctor knows more than us. But sometimes we think we know more than the doctor. So it's the same thing with the Buddha. Yeah? It's like, well, what does the Buddha know? He's telling me to do all these things that sound pretty drastic. Yeah? Like not get intoxicated anymore. Oh my God, what kind of advice is that? Everybody will think I'm so weird if I don't drink and drug with them. They'll think I'm puritanical. They'll criticize Buddhism. Yeah? I can't possibly give that up. Okay? So, same thing. Okay? So that's worthy of scorn from the wise. And sometimes, have you ever had the experience of you thought, that advice, ridiculous, I'm not listening. Who's ever giving you advice? Yeah. And then some time goes by, you have some more experiences, and then you go, oh, that advice that somebody gave me that I didn't follow was actually good advice. You ever had that happen to you? You get yourself in a royal mess, and then it's like, kind of like when you're a teenager and whatever your parents tell you not to do, well, you go out and do. And then, maybe some negative things happen, maybe they don't, but years later you look back and you realize what a dangerous situation you placed yourself in, even though nothing negative happened at that particular time. It sure could have. And then you go, oh, I guess my mom and dad knew something. Yeah, but at the time, it's like, what do parents know? Zero. Yeah, -0. Okay, so very similar. We're such curious beings, aren't we? Yeah, how we decide things, how we choose things. We're so curious. We think we're reasonable, but I don't know. So 57. Okay, this is showing the necessity to relate it to the example of the abyss. Abyss, not abyss. Okay. So if I need to be careful near a small, ordinary precipice, when is there a small, ordinary abyss or small, ordinary precipice? I mean, precipice implies it's not, falling 2 steps down, it's a ways, okay? If I need to be careful near a small, ordinary precipice, then how much more so near the one of deep duration that drops for 1,000 miles. Okay, so this is a physical analogy. Yeah, you're standing on the edge of, at Yosemite, looking down there, and kind of, you should be worried, not worried, you should be aware of the danger. Okay, so in the same way, we should be aware of the danger of taking lower rebirths or being separated from the Dharma in future lives. So it is inappropriate to enjoy myself, thinking that today alone I shall not die. For inevitably the time will come when I shall become nothing. So why are we talking about death and abysses and things like this? We're still in the context of the 4 opponent powers to purify, and we're thinking about why it's important to purify sooner rather than later. Yeah, because death will definitely come. We don't know when. And when we die, our body, possessions, friends, and relatives are of no use. They can't come with us. Okay, so which means that we not only have to practice the Dharma, but we have to practice it now, and we should try and do so purely, without ignorance, anger, and attachment, without the 8 worldly concerns. So, because we so often don't think we're going to die, or we don't think death is anytime soon, then we say we have a lot of time, and there's so many more interesting things to do first. Yeah? It's like, first, let's go out and have a relationship. Have some kids, have my career and really do well in my career, and then do some extraordinary things in my career that nobody else has done. And then they'll write about me in Time magazine. Wow. Then my parents will really be impressed with me, and they'll finally I'll get their approval. And on and on and on and on. Because we don't think death is going to come anytime soon. So why are we thinking about this and the danger of dying before we've purified? Because it very well could happen if, we just have this attitude of, I will practice mañana en la mañana. Did I say it right? Yeah, mañana en la mañana. Tomorrow morning, I'll practice, not today. Okay? So that's why it's saying it's inappropriate to enjoy myself in a worldly way. So this is not saying we have to suffer. It's just saying, really think about what you think happiness is. Yeah, I know in my life when I look back at what I thought happiness was, it's like I don't want to do that anymore. That wasn't really happiness. Yeah, you had that experience? Looking back at things you used to do that you thought were like so much fun. And it's like, no, I have no appetite for that anymore. Okay? So it doesn't mean, not enjoying our life. It just means really thinking of what truly brings us a sense of well-being and fulfillment. Yeah. And if running around chasing after worldly happiness actually brings that or not. Yeah. We just got done watching the Democratic and this week the Republican national conventions. Everybody appears so happy, except the ones that are yelling and screaming. But they seem happy to yell and scream and insult and denigrate. Yeah. But all these people happy, they're in the in club. Yeah, society knows their name. Do you think they're happy? Yeah, some of these people have grown up in this incredibly rarefied environment where they really actually know very little about what common Americans' lives are like, because they've grown up with the silver spoon in their mouth, and, as I say, often with the silver foot in their mouth. Yeah. And so never having to do things for themselves. Remember when the Prez said, don't you have to have an ID to go to the grocery store? Indicating that he's never had to go to the store himself to buy food. So if you live in this rarefied environment, yeah, then you think you have happiness because this is what society tells you is happiness. But I don't know about you, when I look at those people, they don't seem very happy to me. And when some of them have come, not these people I'm talking about, but other quite, people in that rarefied environment, when they've come to Dharma teachings, or rather when they want individual instructions in the Dharma, then you see that their lives are really quite painful and filled with confusion. Yeah. So it really makes us think, what is happiness? So in this mess that we're in, this mess of samsara, who can grant me fearlessness? How can I be surely free from this? If I shall inevitably become nothing, how can I relax and enjoy myself? So this statement, in the previous verse it started, I shall become nothing. And in this verse, if I shall inevitably become nothing. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, it means that this whole ego identity that we have built up, thinking this is who I am, and all of our actions are geared towards pleasing that I and defending it from harm, and trying to manipulate the world so it treats me the way I think I should be treated, because I am this special person who happens to be the center of the universe. All of that, like that, disappears when we die. Yeah, all of it gone. So from the perspective of the world, people may go through all the stuff in our house, and they may think we're still there because of it. But that's just junk in the house, most of which they're going to throw away. We may think, oh, but when I die, I will remain. Yeah, and I left my legacy, and I can look at my life, and there's my legacy. Yeah, my 2.5 children. Yeah, my bank account that is measured by how many zeros it has. The first number is not important. It's the number of zeros that come after the first number that is important. Okay, so not 10, but 10 million, more zeros. Okay, but all of that, when we die, gone, finished. And if you think that after you die, you're going to sit there in some kind of lullaby situation, thinking of how everybody is crying about and missing you, forget it. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Maybe they cry for a little bit, or they hire somebody to come and cry. Yeah, because that shows how much they love you if they cry. Of course, they're not crying for you. They're crying for their own self. Yeah. And meanwhile, our whole identity with that lifetime is gone. We are no longer that person. So you're in the bardo, running from this place to that place, yeah, uncontrollably, not knowing what you're doing, trying to get another body. Yeah. So there's no time to think, I am so wonderful in that state. And then when you go kerplunk and you land yourself in another body, then the experience of that new life is so strong that forget about memories of the previous life. Anyway, even if, let's say you're born as a human being, as a baby, yeah, do you think you're going to come out of the womb and say, I was the incarnation of such and such a billionaire in my previous life, so you guys really hit it. You got the home run having me as a kid, and they're going to go, yeah, where are your $1 billion? Yeah. But anyway, we can't talk as a kid. All we do is go, I'm hungry. Forget your $1 billion. Okay? So we become nothing, basically. And when you think about it, in 100 years, how many of us are even going to be remembered by future generations, let alone have anybody even know our name? Yeah? I mean, maybe you'll have a relative that does genealogy and they'll find out your name, but they have no knowledge about you. It's just a name. Yeah. So we completely erased. Although you may say, but, they'll write me down. My name will live in history books. Yeah. Do you think that what is written in history books really understands the person that they're talking about? Yeah. How people are portrayed in history books? Do they really deeply understand that person? And what about if our history doesn't matter? I love this thing of Columbus discovered America, because before that, America didn't exist. He discovered it like it was something new. So all the people who lived in America for thousands of years before Columbus came, they have no names. no culture except a few pots that we find in museums, no history of their culture, nothing, because they were completely non-existent before Columbus put his 2 feet on the continent and brought smallpox as a gift to those people. Yeah, isn't it amazing how thousands of years of a people's history went totally unnoticed? It didn't exist. Yeah. It's quite interesting, don't you think? So verse 60, it is unsuitable to be attached because possessions are unreliable. Really? They're unreliable? What remains with me now from the terminated experiences of the past. Yet through my great attachment to them, I have been going against my spiritual master's advice. So this verse doesn't seem to me that it's so much about possessions. It could be what remains with me now from the terminated experiences of the past. So it could be souvenirs, and all the stuff in your place and family pictures and all of that. But it could mean memories, memories of the past, how sometimes, you sit down and go through the old memories and think about what happened to all these people I used to know. I should Google them, see if I can find them on Facebook or somewhere, and I wonder what happened to them. Yeah. But, it's just memories, isn't it? And even you meet up with that person again, then what? Yeah. Now, it's true, some people, we have the kind of friendships where we don't keep in touch, but when we see them, we sync again. But other people, I had the experience, I got an email a few years ago from somebody who was actually my closest friend in my early 20s. We worked at the same place. We were very, very good friends and kind of shared a lot. And I had always wondered what happened to her, because we had lost touch because I lived in Asia for so long. And all of a sudden, I get this email, and it's from her, but she has a different name now. Her first name was a name that could have several different nicknames, so she had changed the nickname. And her last name was also different because she had got married again for the 3rd time. And I was initially very excited to be in touch with her. Yeah. And, wanted to talk and things like that. And I suggested that we have a Skype call, but nothing, all I got was just a few emails back from her. And then the last one was saying how she really likes to knit, and to let her know if we needed any little beanies for the winter here. And somehow that email just stopped me dead in my tracks, because the person I knew years ago was not somebody who knitted beanies. Yeah. It was someone who was, quite dynamic and thoughtful and introspective. And I was really shocked. Yeah. And that was kind of the last we were in contact. Yeah. So how did I get on that story? Memory lane, yeah. So how we have not only a reified image of ourselves, but of everybody else. And then it doesn't turn out to be like we thought. I led one retreat at Cloud Mountain many years ago. Some of you may have been at it. And there was one man there who told us the story of, he, I don't know, but how he somehow got in touch with an old flame from many, many years ago. And he was thinking, she invited him to come over, and he was thinking, wow, this is great. I mean, she's gorgeous, she's intelligent, she's this and that. I'm eager to see her. And he went to the house and rang the doorbell. And a woman who weighed 300 pounds came to the door. And he went, this was not what I was expecting. Yeah. And his whole visualization of how they were going to renew this relationship went, yeah. So, memories are simply that, memories. And they can't be reactivated into present situations. Yeah. And to hold on to our memories, of what use is that? None of that is happening now. If we can remember situations and, things where we have to heal from them, or we have to make amends to people we harmed, or think of situations where we lacked compassion at the time they were happening, and now we're realizing that we should have had more compassion, or should have acted differently. Those kind of things can be useful in our Dharma practice, to enhance the scope of our compassion. But otherwise, just dreaming about happy experiences. They're gone, they've become nothing, and the person we were then does not exist. We are not the person who was 20 years old doing X and X. We are the person who is, how old now? Doing something totally different and thinking totally different. Okay, but through our great attachment to all these things, not just the memories, but all the happenings right now in this life, potential pleasure we could have, we've been going against our spiritual mentor's advice. So we've been hearing teachings, getting advice, and just had the attitude of, it doesn't really matter, or mañana en la mañana, or this advice is for somebody else, it's not for me. Okay. So then, verse 61, having departed from this life and from all my friends and relatives, if all alone I must go elsewhere, what is the use of making friends and enemies? Okay, so we have to understand this verse. It's saying, if I'm going to die and I'm going to be reborn, okay, so having departed from this life and from all my friends and relatives, everybody who's on my side supporting me, who I can look to for refuge, if all alone I must go elsewhere, what is the use of being attached to friends and creating so much negative karma in my relationships because I have so much attachment to them? And what's the use of having antipathy towards enemies and being so intent on revenge or on harming them if I'm going to die and they're going to die and nobody is going to even remember our names later on, let alone, the events of our life that made us friends or enemies. So what is the use of getting attached and having antipathy? What's the use of letting those emotions flourish in our mind? Yeah. If we die and the situations that we had them in are all gone, and yet the karma we created is going to throw us into a whole new situation, yeah, then what's the use of what we did? So really something to think about. It's like, what's it like? It's like working really, really hard to get a degree, staying up late studying and all the pressure of exams and this and that and raising the money to pay for the tuition. And then at the end, deciding that you don't want to do that as a career. And you go, oh, I did all of that to get the qualifications, and now I don't even want to do that, So it's asking us, how are we thinking? How are we thinking? What really is meaningful in our lives? And for me, it shows me how often I just get involved in things because at the time being, it seems like a good idea, but I'm not really thinking long term, or I'm not really thinking in a Dharma way. And certainly before I met the Dharma, I didn't even know what the Dharma way was to look at situations. So I made all sorts of decisions, did all sorts of things with the value of only this lifetime. So 62, how can I be surely freed from unwholesomeness, the source of misery? Okay, so really looking back on my past, and wow, I had so many friends and enemies and got so involved with them, and now they're all gone. Yeah, think of how many enemies you've had in your life. People you haven't gotten along with, people who criticized you, people who harmed you, people who threatened you, people who drove you crazy and you had so much fear and dread and animosity towards them. And where are they now? We don't even know them. Yeah? We don't even know them. The kid who beat us up when we were little, or threw sand in our eyes when we were in the sandbox. We spent so much energy having antipathy, and those people are nowhere to be seen in our lives now. Yeah? By and large. Few people may still be around. Okay, same thing with friends. Yeah, our friends from when we were little kids, gone. Except your friends, some of them became politicians, didn't they? Yeah. Then they're really gone. You haven't seen them since high school.
My siblings have because of the campaigning they do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so your siblings see them, but you haven't. It might be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm hoping to run into them.
Yeah. But some of them, You belong to different parties now, huh? Yeah. But it's interesting. So how can I be surely freed from the unwholesomeness, the source of misery? Continuously, night and day, I should only consider this. So I need to get my act together. And I should think about what I need to purify and how to make the rest of my life meaningful and useful and, create some merit and put as many imprints of the Dharma in my mind as I possibly can. Yeah, this is what I should devote my mental energy to. Yeah, not thinking about how I can get in good with somebody else or get revenge or whatever. So whatever has been done by me through ignorance and unknowing, be it the breaking of a vow or a deed by nature wrong, I humbly confess it all in the presence of the protectors, with folded hands, prostrating myself again and again, my mind terrified by the misery to come. Okay, so we're now kind of looking at our whole lives from a Dharma perspective and going, whoa, I need to really change course here, because what I did before was not really leading me to the goals that now I see are the important aims in life or the important purposes of life to have. Okay, so everything I did, whether I broke precepts, whether I did naturally negative actions, all of that now, I completely, humbly, open myself up. I'm not trying to justify them or explain them or blame them on somebody else or make excuses for myself. I'm just completely opening up and confessing them. And making a decision to avoid them again in the future. And there is such a sense of relief when we can really do that, openly do that. When we do the confession prayer, posada, every half month, where it says, all of the negativities I have done by body, speech, and mind, overpowered by ignorance, anger, and attachment, then I think of who knows what in the world I did in previous lives. All of the negativities I've done in previous lives, with my mind totally flipped out in afflictions, not even recognizing that what I was doing was harmful to myself, let alone it being harmful to other people. Total space case I was. And, when I really think of that, then it's like, okay, just got to be completely open. I can't remember all those things, but whatever they were, I really sincerely regret them, and I want to put my life in a good direction now. And, that kind of, when you can get there in your practice, there's really a tremendous sense of, I think, relief. Because we're turning things around and, we're redirecting our lives towards something that is good, and we're repairing what happened in the past, not just ignoring it. So with folded hands, that means Anjali, your palms together, prostrating myself again and again. In other words, I can't do it. I can't open myself up and confess this enough, my mind terrified by the misery to come. It doesn't mean terrified the way we get terrified normally. It means aware of the danger of what would happen if I were born in an unfortunate realm. What would happen if I were born in a place where the Dharma didn't exist. Maybe I would be somebody with a very strong spiritual craving, but the Buddha's teaching is nowhere to be found. What would I do then? Yeah. So it means that kind of awareness of danger, not terrified of, the boogeyman's going to get me. Not like that. Okay? So I beseech the guides of the world to please accept my transgressions and wrongs. Since these are not good in the future, I shall do them no more. So it's the powers of confession and regret, and the power of making a decision not to do it again. And we're doing this in front of the guides of the world, the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha, those who know how to guide us to actual happiness. Okay. So when we say, please accept my transgressions and wrongs, it's not like, here, I'm giving them to you. This is my offering to you, all my non-virtue. Please accept them. And I also have this pile of garbage here. Do you want that too? Okay. It doesn't mean passing off our garbage to the holy beings. Yeah. It means, please accept the fact that I am being completely transparent and not hiding anything, and help me to make amends and to clear away the seeds and imprints of these harmful actions that I've done. And then saying, I will do them no more. And so with some things, we can truthfully say, I will do them no more. I can see how I messed up, and never again will I do that. Can you think of things in your life that you've done that you can really truthfully say, I will not do that one again. Forget it. Yeah. And then other things, maybe you're not so certain that you will never do it again. And so for those, make a short period of time where you can say, I won't do it again. Try a day or two. Yeah. And then you do it for a day or two. That gives you some confidence. Then you can do it another day or two. Okay, so try that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of chapter 2. Gyaltsab Je has a summarizing verse from his commentary. So he says, those tormented by the faults of attachment, jealousy, and conceit, due to exaggeration, will not generate the supreme mind of bodhicitta. Hence, whatever mistakes one made with body, speech, and mind, confess them from the depths of one's heart to the protectors being the Buddhas. Okay? So, those tormented by the faults of attachment, jealousy, and conceit. Now, interesting, he doesn't say attachment, anger, and confusion, the usual ones. Attachment's the same. Jealousy. Yeah. Think, sometimes if we just focus on ignorance, anger, and attachment, we miss out thinking of the negativities we've created by the other things. So think of jealousy, what you've done under the force of jealousy. And how often can we even recognize when we're jealous? How often does our mind get overwhelmed by jealousy and we don't see it as jealousy at all? We see it as, this is unfair. And I know for myself, for years, there are certain situations that I look back on and I thought, this is just things that are unfair, that certain people have privileges and opportunities that I don't have. And this was very much linked to being a woman. So because I'm a woman, then I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do the other thing, and just feeling the unfairness of that situation. And then I remember one day I realized actually I was jealous of the men who could do those things. It wasn't just feeling unfair. It was like I was jealous. They get those opportunities and I don't. And it was so different for me to look at that from the viewpoint of jealousy instead of from the viewpoint of unfairness. Yeah. Granted, there's things that are unfair and are unjust, and those exist, and we need to correct them. But, so that part was right. But the emotional flavor of that's unjust, and the problem is outside. Why am I suffering? The problem is outside. That's unfair. The difference between that and actually acknowledging to myself, I'm jealous. I don't know about you, but I hate acknowledging that I'm jealous. I really hate acknowledging that. But it was true. Yeah, I had to. And then conceit. Again, can we even identify conceit in our mind? And the different levels of conceit. Yeah, because sometimes when we're good, we are good. That's the truth of who I am. Yeah. So, yes, we have certain qualities. We can acknowledge that. We can pat ourselves on the back for things well done. But conceit adds something else in the same way that jealousy adds something else to unfairness. What is it? Exaggeration. That's the second word in Gyaltsab Je's thing. Those tormented by the faults of attachment, jealousy, and conceit due to exaggeration. So I exaggerate the unfairness so it becomes jealousy, and I'm tormented by jealousy. Yeah. Due to exaggerating the goodness of what I think I've attained, then I get conceited. And how much I suffer when I'm conceited too. Yeah. Because when you're conceited and you don't notice it, then you wonder why so many people don't like you. You can't understand it. Well, it's like, duh, because I am arrogant as all get out, that's why. But we can't see it. Yeah. And we can't see the negativities that we impose on other people due to our conceit and our arrogance. And even the conceit I am. Yeah, that's a special kind of conceit. The conceit of I am. I. This thing that is the center of the universe, that is of the foremost importance, around which my whole life revolves. I. The conceit of being I. Yeah. Think about that sometimes. It's pretty, what we do motivated by that conceit of just being I. Okay? So, hence, whatever mistakes one has made with body, speech, and mind, confess them from the depths of one's heart to the protectors. Not from the, this is the depths of one's heart, instead of from one's lips. You know, like, oh yes, I'm very sorry I did all these negativities. Am I a good guy now? But actually, we're not so sorry. We're only sorry because other people disapprove. We're not sorry because we caused them pain. We're not sorry because we put seeds of negativity on our own minds. We're just sorry because we're a people pleaser and we've disappointed the people we have supposed to please, and we're afraid they won't like us anymore. Yeah. We should have a skit about the people pleasers form of Buddhism. Yeah. That would make a good skit, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay. So then there's an outline in Gyaltsabje's text, just reviewing chapter 2. So I think it might be good. So it's the chapter is an explanation of the practices of refuge, offerings, prostrations, and purifying with the 4 powers. Okay? And so why do we do this? Yeah. Because unless we become a purified vessel, we cannot generate bodhicitta. I think Gyaltsabje said that in his last verse here. No, he didn't. But that's what it means. You know, if we're thinking that without cleaning out the negativity in our mind and making some firm decisions about how we want to be in the future, that we're all of a sudden going to be able to drop all of our ignorance, anger, and attachment and generate bodhicitta really simply, that's not going to work. Yeah, because there's too much garbage in our mind to be able to do it. Yeah, so it's kind of like thinking, you want to sell your car, but you stuff all the garbage under the seats, yeah, and in the trunk, in the back, and under the wheels, you tape it up there, and so you make it look all nice so that you can sell your car for a really good price. But do you really think you're going to sell your car for a good price when there's all that rubbish in it? Yeah, that's wishful thinking. So the same thing here, we really have to clean our mind out or up or, do something with it. So there's space in our mind for generating bodhicitta. Because if you look at it, just plain and simple, okay? If there is somebody who I can't stand, yeah, I just can't stand them, verging on hatred, which, of course, none of us like to admit we hate somebody, but somebody we have so much antipathy towards that we just cannot endure them. Yeah. And we can't even stand to hear their voice. Then, and to have bodhicitta, we need to have great love and great compassion for every single sentient being, omitting none. How can we generate that mind when we have so much negative feeling towards even one individual? Yeah? How in the world are we going to generate bodhicitta if our mind is so stuck on that person is intolerable? Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah. It's like you have ink stains all over something, and you think that you're going to be able to give it one paint, you use a watercolor white, yeah. Paint over it with the watercolors of a white watercolor, and that will completely make it turn white again when it's stained by ink. Oh, yeah. So, cleansing, purification, really important. Okay, so the chapter, that's why we're doing all this in the chapter. So then it goes into the whole topic of offering. We discussed that, and why to make offerings, how to make offerings, what things to offer, things that are owned, things that are unowned, offering our body, okay, offering a bath and everything that comes with that. And then there was a whole section of offering we went over. Then there was a whole section of prostrations. So verbal prostrations, praising the three jewels, physical prostrations, bowing down, okay, to the three gems, to the basis for generating bodhicitta, to the abbots, preceptors, and so forth. And then taking refuge, okay, in taking refuge in what are objects of reliable refuge. Yeah. Lama Yeshe, when he used to give us refuge in the old days, he said, people think taking refuge is something new. It's not new. You're taking refuge all the time. Yeah? Who do you seek happiness from? Who do you think will protect you from unhappiness? You take refuge in your boyfriend or girlfriend. You take refuge in spaghetti and chocolate. You take refuge in your bank account and credit card. Taking refuge is nothing new. It's just you've been taking refuge in the wrong thing until now. Yeah. I remember hearing him say that and going, oh my goodness, he's right. Yeah. And then when I read, there's one verse which I cannot find now, somewhere in the Pali Canon, I think it's in the Majjhima Nikaya, where the Buddha is talking about when he was an ordinary sentient being, and he took refuge in other ordinary sentient beings. So here is one person overcome by afflictions, taking refuge in another person overcome by afflictions. How is that going to result in anything good? Okay, it's right. It's right. Okay, so then after taking refuge, getting into the whole thing of the four opponent powers. Okay, so we talked about regret, generating regret. The general regret that we generate, confessing heavy negativities in relationship to special objects. So the objects of virtue, the objects of suffering. Okay, we talked about the results of non-virtue and the lower rebirths. And then going into, if lower rebirths are a possibility and I'm going to die and I don't know when, then, going into the details about that. So having regret for meaninglessly generating negativity, okay, and how all those things we generated negativity in relationship to are becoming a mere object of memory at the time of death. And then we talked about their unreliability and are being completely, mindless regarding the eventuality of our own death. And then, looking at that situation squarely and thinking of the dangers of that, that we put ourselves in by not clearing up these things from the past. Okay, then the power of the basis. So there was a whole section on taking refuge in the three jewels, starting right now. A whole section on reaching out to the different bodhisattvas, taking refuge in them. Okay, and then we went into the application of the antidote a bit, and why it is important to practice the antidote and do actually all four opponent powers now rather than later. And then we talked about making the decision not to engage in the action again, which is what we covered today. Okay, so that was just a brief summary of chapter 2. Yeah. Now we're going to go into chapter 3, because of having seen the benefits of bodhicitta, having done some purification and accumulation of merit, then chapter 3 is going to talk about generating the bodhicitta. So we'll get into that next session. And in the meantime, you may have some questions from what we went over today.
These verses continually stun me on how frightful not looking at our situation really is.
Yeah.
And even in the greatest and most beautiful circumstances that we have, it's still not something to fall asleep in.
Yeah.
But he just puts it so in your eyeballs. And it really stuns me on what a dangerous situation we're in.
Yeah. And that, letting ourselves be stunned, letting our mind be made sober by this awareness, is what leads us to generate the aspiration to be free from samsara or renunciation. Yeah. So it's that state of mind of really looking squarely at and being stunned and alarmed by what samsara is.
Earlier in the talk this morning when you were telling us about, who is going to remember us in 100 years? Who will even remember our name in 100 years? Yeah. I remember I was in my mid-20s and I was with a friend at one of these antique fairs. And there was many, many photo albums from probably the mid part of the 1800s. And I was absolutely shaken up emotionally. I thought, why are these things here? Why don't they still belong in the family? They were photographs of very wealthy people. Obviously, they had many horses, carriages, fur coats, lots of gatherings, And I was just thinking, why is this on this antique table for sale? Well, people died off. People didn't put it in the landfill. There weren't landfills at that point. And so now somebody just, they bought a household of things, and they're just selling it. And who cares? There are no names in these albums. And it was just so riveting for me in my mid-20s. I thought, this will happen to our family too.
Yeah. And somebody else may wind up buying your family photo album at an antique store, and they don't even know that it's my family. They just look at it and who are all these people? It's strange, isn't it?
Someone is asking, maybe it's a silly question, but how do you stop feeling ashamed for your past mistakes? Is there any specific meditation technique?
for remedying shame, I think I've talked about this, in the last few Thursday talks, also in the series about forgiveness. But basically, what I find very good to deal with shame, or when there's really heavy self-negative talk, is I imagine the person that I was then who did those actions. And I imagine having a dialogue with her. She's not who I am now. She was another person. I'm much older now. I think differently. I've had different life experiences. I have different values. But I understand that person that I used to be. And I understand her suffering. I understand what she was trying to accomplish by doing certain actions, even though what she did was completely off base. But I can look at her with eyes of compassion because I understand her and I understand her pain. So I find having that kind of dialogue with that person that I used to be, and she can tell me everything, knowing that I understand her, and I can give back to her that acceptance and compassion because I do understand her. And then that alleviates the pain. And then I can, really do the purification practice, confessing also to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Without feeling ashamed, but just acknowledging that the enemy is not myself, the enemy is my afflictions. So I don't have to feel shame like I was inherently negative. It's the afflictions that clobbered me over the head. And those afflictions are not who I am. The seeds of those actions are not who I am. And so I can purify all of that. And generate bodhicitta instead.
There's also, this comes up for me again, and it hasn't come up in a long time, but this balance between creating virtue and really wanting to hold some appreciation for what has been done, what I have done, the purification that's been there, working, aspiring for a good rebirth in order to continue practice. And then also looking at a verse like this where you realize that there's so much to be done. Mm-hmm. So kind of balancing the faith and hope and confidence in what practice we've done, and also assessing that, in fact, my mind is still full of afflictions, mm-hmm. Just as much as it ever has been, as far as I can tell. Just a little bit about how to balance these things, I think would be helpful for me and maybe others.
Okay. So this deals with the mind that expects to put 4 quarters in the no, not the slot machine, the machine, the soda machine. And immediately a soda comes. It's dealing with that mind. I put my quarters in, immediately the candy bar comes. Immediately the soda comes. That's it. All I had to do was put in the quarters one time, finished. So it's dealing with that mind. Which unfortunately our modern culture has really imprinted in us, that we should be able to do everything quick and cheap and easily. So it's undoing that false thing that we have been told that we are entitled to. So it's not just society that's doing this, it's our own impatience. It's our own, well, I did it one time, isn't that good enough? Yeah. Yeah. Don't you remember when you were little, like learning to do certain things? Oh, like when you're learning how to type. Yeah. Remember typing class? Yeah. And it's like, okay, I typed out that boring thing once. Isn't that good enough? Even though it has, 108 errors in it. No, you got to practice. Oh, why do I have to practice this finger and this finger? So I learned to practice. I was willing to practice more to do letters. I cannot type numbers without looking. I was not willing to do that. It was like, okay, I got the letters down with lots of mistakes. I accept that. Not funny that I can accept my bad typing, but I can't accept my other mistakes. But, doing numbers, no, I'm done. Okay. So it's that same mind, isn't it? Yeah. I did this much. Why do I have to do more?
Year after year after year.
Oh, it's so boring. Practicing Dharma is so boring. If I've prostrated once, I've prostrated 100,000 times. Oh, and they're all the same because I've been spaced out on every single one of them.
No, it's not the boredom, it's the fear that it's insufficient.
The fear that it's never going to be enough. Yeah. Well, until we get to path of seeing, there's always the chance. But we start to shift the odds. We start to shift the odds. And I think when we begin to see even tiny progress, then it gives us more compassion for ourselves and more confidence for ourselves. That, yeah, I can do it. And I'm beginning to shift it, and I just keep typing again and again. And then I can someday be like this kind of typist that does it without any mistakes. Okay. Okay.